I completely agree with you. They've got to step in. They've got to realize that player safety, or athlete safety, excuse me, is more important than anything. This is a huge issue. And the question has always been, well, how do you get around it? How do you figure out the weight classes? I think it's similar to what you said. My idea was guys weigh in. This is the weight class you're at, your natural walking weight. And I understand they want guys to not be out of shape. They want guys not to be winded so that they can last longer in the fights. But that's at their own discretion. They should be able to keep up with that on their own without having to lose 30 pounds to meet weight just to be able to fight in a match. It just seems so unhealthy to me. And so what I think they should do is judge it by their walking around weight. This is your weight. This is what class you're in. You have within 5 pounds or so to fight someone. Maybe 10 pounds at most. This is the amount of leeway either way. Yeah, so 10 pounds, but 5 pounds either way. This is the amount of leeway you're able to have in that specific class. So make sure you're able to make it. We do not want you cutting weight to go to a lower class. That's not allowed. This is your weight class because this is your walking around weight. This is the class that you're going to be in.
It doesn't make any sense.
That's what they should allow.
No, I totally agree with that 100%. They have the ability to do it, and they seem to cover their eyes. And I mean, Dana White thinks it's this huge deal to make it so that the early weigh-ins are no longer a thing, that they're going to go back to the afternoon weigh-ins. It doesn't matter. It's still people. It's going to make it so guys and girls are going to be their unhealthy weights for even closer to fight time, and they have less time to rehydrate and get their brains back in working order. And it doesn't make sense to me. But given that, it was a hell of a fight between Robert Whitaker and Yoel Romero. I personally thought Yoel Romero won it. I think the fact that he did not get any 10-8 rounds by any of the judges in either the fourth or fifth was crazy, especially the fifth. I mean, he knocked down Robert Whitaker a couple times and dazed him a few times. Really, I could watch these two guys fight each other another 50 times. I don't care, if Robert Whitaker wins 80% of them just because of the way they match up. These guys bring out the best in each other, with Robert Whitaker being the technical brawler and the guy who has a bunch of stamina, and then Yoel Romero just being an absolute athletic freak, still being 40 years old, and just having the ability to strike like a cobra and knock, Robert Whitaker almost unconscious a couple of times and still come up short. And Robert Whitaker wins a split decision. Bobby, did you see the fight? Did you see the highlights? Who did you have winning the fight?
No, I got to read about it and see some Twitter stuff, but I didn't get to see the fights. It seemed like it was a really good card altogether, but I was bummed that I didn't get to see it. I thought for sure that Romero would be able to take this one because I loved their first fight, but I thought Yoel just really didn't give his full effort, and I thought going into round two, he'd be able to really push the envelope, and it sounds like that wasn't the case.
Yeah, so he kind of paced himself to the first round or two because he knew, this Whitaker does not gas out. He's a guy who can keep going. And so he tried to kind of contain himself, and he knocked Whitaker down a couple of times in later rounds. Looking at MMAdecisions.com, which tallies a bunch of it tallies the official decision, and then it also tallies the decisions from media members. So 5 of the media members tallied had Robert Whitaker winning 48-47, which is what 2 of the judges had. Let's see, about 7 or 8 had a 47-47 draw, which, if you ask me, might be the way to go because I think Whitaker probably won the first 3 rounds. Romero won the last 2 rounds, with the last round being a 10-8. And then another, looks like 9 or 10 had Yoel Romero winning 48-47. And then 5 had Romero winning 48-46. So the majority of the writers had Yoel Romero winning at least, 50% to 30% draw and 20% Whitaker winning. So that kind of brought in this debate whether UFC and MMA in general needs more than 3 judges to judge a fight. Maybe bring in 5 or 7 judges, and maybe that larger sample size makes it so we have less controversial decisions. What do you think about that idea?
No, I agree with that idea. I think that's exactly what the UFC needs right now, and I think that can only improve upon the system that they have, especially with them decreasing in popularity. I think that's a great way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be something to try at least. Maybe try it on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
try it with something like that and see how it works out. And
which I apologize for interrupting.
No problem.
But I saw a commercial for that for the Contender Series today.
Yeah.
There's a guy with one arm.
Yes. So Nick Newell, who fought in World Series of Fighting, is going to be fighting on it. So he has two arms, but he only has one hand. So he is born without a left hand. So his left arm ends pretty much at where his elbow is. And this is not, and people, maybe don't know his background and his ability. He is not on there just for publicity. He is 14-1 as a pro fighter. The only loss he has is to Justin Gaethje, who is in the UFC and who is a crazy, wild fighter who knocked out everyone he saw until he lost his last two fights in the UFC. So he's a guy who has earned a spot on this series. But yeah, I'm sure. I don't know when he is going to be fighting. I know he's going to be on the series. I don't know what episode he's going to be on, but it'll be interesting to see how he fares and if he wins, if he's going to be called up to the UFC.
That's so impressive in so many different ways.
Yes.
Just for him to be able to do that. I mean, I kudos to the UFC for giving him a shot in the big leagues. Like that. Yeah. That's very impressive and good for him. I was just surprised when I saw that because. You don't see the UFC pushing the boundaries like that really at all. So to see that, it was really cool to see.
Yeah, and it kind of took some prodding by the internet MMA community to get Dana White to agree to let him do it. But once he did, he's kind of try to take credit for it, which is kind of the Dana White thing to do. But hey, no, I agree. Mm-hmm. Good for them to actually let him on and let him do his thing. Running down the rest of the UFC main card, we only got like about 8 minutes here before we hit the 2-hour mark, Bobby. So Colby Covington defeated Rafael dos Anjos to win the interim welterweight championship. Colby Covington is just a cardio freak, and he's able to wrestle and strike pretty much endlessly, and was able to overwhelm dos Anjos with his movement and his just relentless ability there. So he'll be fighting the welterweight champion Tyron Woodley whenever Tyron gets healed up, and that's going to be a pretty big fight because those guys hate each other, and they've been going at it in on Twitter and via social media. They used to train with each other, they don't anymore, and Colby Covington obviously has his Donald Trump, all the colored people are bad gimmick going for him. So that'll be a interesting fight when it happens, and I hope Tyron Woodley knocks him out. So that's that. Holly Holm got an impressive win over debuting Megan Anderson, who was the Invicta featherweight champion. So it looks like Holly Holm might be in line now to get another title shot, whether it be at Cyborg or at Amanda Nunes. And I think that kind of says as much about the depth or the lack of depth in the women's divisions, at least in bantamweight and featherweight right now, as much as Holly Holm, because she's only won, this one fight. She lost to Chris Cyborg before that. She beat Betch Correa before that, but then before Betch, she lost 3 in a row.
Easy Betch.
So she's 2-5 or 2-4 in her last 6 fights, and yet she's probably going to be fighting for a title next. But you know what? At the same time, Holly Holm has kind of turned herself into a legend of the sport with her knockout of Ronda Rousey and her great fight against Miesha Tate. So is that something you want to see her fighting for either one of those titles next, or is there someone you had in mind that might be able to, stay in front of her? I don't really see anyone.
I don't really see anyone either. It's honestly, I don't see anyone that could be possibly a contender in that situation.
Yeah, so it's that's kind of what they've built themselves into. They had Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate and Holly Holm as like their 3-headed monster at bantamweight for a long time. Now Ronda's gone and Misha's gone, and Holly's the last one there, and they didn't really plan for the future in the bantamweight division, so this is kind of what they're left with. Yeah. All right, so Bobby, we have a fight this weekend. It is it is not a fight card to write home about, so we'll maybe just really quickly talk about the top 2 fights, which are really the only 2 fights that feature people that the average fan would know. So this is UFC Fight Night 130 or 126. It's coming to you from Singapore. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong fight night here. Donald Cerrone. Hold on 1 second.
That's Fight Pass.
132 from Singapore this Saturday on Fight Pass. Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's on Fight Pass. Donald Cerrone is fighting Leon Edwards in the main event. I think this kind of says two things. One, Donald Cerrone is on the downslope of his career. He is 35 years old. And
he's officially a Fight Pass headliner.
Right. And he did win his last fight. He knocked out Yancy Medeiros, but he had lost 3 in a row before that. And he is still a good fighter. He is still a fan favorite, obviously, being a guy you want to headline some shows. But he has looked like a guy who has definitely seen better days in his last few fights. And now he's fighting a guy, Leon Edwards, who has a pretty good record. He's 15-3, but not exactly a guy you would write home about. And this may be the most telling thing about Leon Edwards that I'm about to tell you. He has fought. Do you know how many times he's fought in the UFC, Bobby? Just take a guess. 1, 2. He's fought 9 times in the UFC. He's fought only once in the United States. So he's the guy that you put on a card when you're going to England or the Netherlands or Scotland or Poland or Brazil. He's fought all those. He's literally fought all of those places. He's only fought in the United States once. So he's kind of the guy that is kind of the poster child of the Fight Pass, going to random places to try to get some tickets sold, thing that UFC has done in the last few years. And hey, he's won 5 fights in a row. The last couple over names you possibly might know, but you might not know. Over Peter Sabata, Brian Barberena, and Vicente Luque. Not exactly guys you want to write home about. His only loss, or one of his only losses in the UFC, was to Kamaru Usman, who's really coming up in the welterweight division. But this is kind of where the UFC's at with Donald Cerrone, and with their product, they're kind of putting throwaway cards on Fight Pass. And now that ESPN has come in and bought the rights for both, the Fox Sports deal and probably the Fight Pass cards, they're kind of just treading water now until 2019.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah, so ESPN will be having 12 fights a year on either ESPN or ESPN2, and then 12 fights a year on their new ESPN Plus service. More than that. They're going to have 12 pay-per-views and then something like 30 fights between the two, ESPN and ESPN Plus, which is good. I mean, I look forward to ESPN doing more MMA, because once ESPN kind of gets its claws on a sport, it makes it feel more legitimate. And when it kind of lets go of sports, it kind of makes them feel worse. Kind of like the NHL. Once they drop the NHL from their TV package, the NHL kind of declined in popularity. So it'll be good to see the MMA world get a little more of a spotlight, but kind of seems like the UFC is treading water until that happens. So interesting to see where they go with this.
What's the whole deal with Dana White in this situation? He's just going to head out in the sunset with his billions of dollars, or is he going to still be along for this whole ride?
Yeah, he's still along with it. It's pretty much ESPN is just taking the place of Fox Sports 1. So Dana White's still going to be...
And they're taking everything from Fox Sports 1, even the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, so right now they don't know whether the Ultimate Fighter is going to survive or not.
Really?
Yeah, or maybe it could be something they just put on Fight Pass. I don't know. So they have not figured out what they're doing with the Ultimate Fighter.
Doesn't seem like a ESPN type show.
Right. And maybe they put it on just ESPN Plus, because that's the thing.
No, I figured it out.
What?
ESPN 8, the O show.
That's right. Yeah, it's going to be sandwiched in between extreme bobsledding and dodgeball. So
yes,
it's going to be a fun time for all on ESPN.
Squirrel skiing.
I love that movie so much.
Right.
It is just, it's a classic still, whatever, 15 years later.
ESPN posted about it the other day. They're like, on this day 10 years ago, the Cobra Kai were outmatched by average Joes.
Yes. It was a truly historic moment on the Ocho.
I was dying.
Yeah. So that's the main event. The co-main event, Ovince St. Preux versus Tyson Pedro in the light heavyweight division. So, hey, if you want to watch this card, you're a diehard, and I'll be watching it with you, but I would not blame anyone for skipping this card entirely unless you're a huge Cowboy Cerrone fan.
I just don't see what the point of buying the Fight Pass is outside of the Contender Series.
I buy it mainly for the old fights, because I like looking back at old stuff, because it has pretty much every UFC, or it has every UFC fight on there, and it has a bunch of like Pride and Strike